morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 2 of Clef Notes, where we continue our discussion of Western musical notation and our journey into music theory. Now remember that back in the last video, we had Guido de Arezzo to thank for giving us the idea of letter lines so that we can measure the distance between pitches. Now originally when Guido de Arezzo came up with this, we have a set of 4 lines, and frequently you'll see medieval manuscripts from back in the 1200s, a little bit earlier, a bit later, you'll see just 4 letter lines. Now, that's not quite the case today. In today's notation, which we'll put it there, that is today. My apologies that we've switched the colors here from blue to red. But in today's notation, we have 5 lines, not 4 lines, as well as some kind of odd symbol over here on the left. And why is that? Why have we gone from 4 lines to 5 lines, and we have different symbols we're using? What happened? Well, keep in mind that when Guido de Arezzo introduced the concept of letter lines, he did that at circa 1000 AD. Maybe 1020, 1026. Pick your date, but it's roughly around 1000 AD. So there's been about 1,000 years between when this concept is first introduced, at least for Western musical notation, and today. Somewhere along the line, someone had the bright idea that they wanted 5 lines, not 4 lines. There could be some reason for that. This wasn't directly explained in the classes that I took, why we've gone from 4 to 5 lines. But then we didn't have time to really delve into that. But in some ways it does make sense with the instruments and the ranges that we have today versus back in the day. Because remember, Guido de Arezzo is working with primarily singers that are going to be singing maybe in a church choir. You will have instrumentalists, and you will have instruments that can play, but they don't have the extreme ranges that we have today. At least with something that we may have recorded. But what exactly are letter lines? So yeah, they give us a measurement of distance between 2 notes. For example, if we had this note here, let's put that right there, and this note here, okay, that we have an idea. We've got a space, a line, and a space. But what does that actually mean? Keep in mind that a note has no value, no pitch, unless it is in relation to some sort of standard. Our letter lines give us that standard. But then that also means that these letter lines you could consider to be pitches, particular frequencies. Think of a radio frequency. Name your favorite AM or FM radio station you might listen to in the car if you listen to AM or FM. But think of the frequency there. Well, pitches are nothing more than frequency. Music, in many ways, is simply pitches, intentional frequencies. And these lines that we have, these are indications of frequency. If we have a given value, let's say that this is, let's do something, let's say A. Let's say A natural. We'll just put A. So this is the pitch A. Why don't we budge that over just a little bit? Just a little bit. Okay. This is the pitch A. And for this arrow indicating that this note here on this middle space is the pitch A natural. Well, if these lines are indications of pitch, and this is related to a scale, which we'll talk about later, then this line here, this middle line, is going to be B, and this upper space here is going to be C. And we can go backwards. We can say this middle pitch is A, so then this second line down here is G, our lowest space is F, and then this lowest line is E. This is the genius of Guido de Arezzo. He had scales. He knew what scales were. At that time, they didn't really have key signatures. They used modes, but they basically had scales. You might hear in today's music something called modal scales. Well, it's another way of doing a scale. We won't get into that now. But he knew what scales were, and he knew that everything was sequential. The letter names are sequential. So if he has some means of establishing a pitch or frequency, a reference point, if you will, then he can just overlay a scale on those reference points. So we can call this A, he can call this B, he can call this C, he can go backwards and say A, G, F, E, and so on and so forth. That's what ledger lines are. Ledger lines are the composer telling you what pitches they want. And then he wants to tell you the specific duration of those pitches using notes. So he tells you, I want these direct pitches, and I want this duration of pitches. And the combination of ledger lines and these note values tells you what he wants, or what she wants. In today's music, we no longer have 4 lines, we have 5 lines. But the same idea has carried over. If we put a note here, we can call that A. We have a note here. We can call that C. And we're doing exactly the same thing. Now in this case, I've made it so that A on the today's notation corresponds to A, the 1000s notation. Instead of using the middle line, the middle space, we don't have a middle space here. We've got 4 spaces. You could say these are the inner spaces. I've decided to make A this second space right here. So in effect, all I've done is I've added a line right up here. This is the additional line that we have added. Now again, we've added these symbols here, which we will talk about in another video. But that's all that ledger lines are. There's nothing hidden about them. They're simply indications of pitch. Composers have to have those indications of pitch if they're going to allow a musician to replicate exactly what it is that they're doing. If we don't have an indication of pitch, then all you have is a rough indication of distance between 2 notes. So it's easy for composers, musicians today, just like it was back around 1000, to just count the number of spaces and lines between notes, map that distance onto a scale, and sing those pitches. So that's what ledger lines are. We're going to look more thoroughly in the next video into the symbols like what you're seeing here, and we're also going to look at symbols that divide up ledger lines into little boxes. So tune in for episode number 3. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.